The two things I want to talk about in real estate for sellers today is pricing and condition. Pricing is important because listen, the buyers have all the tools they need to figure out whether the price on your house is the same as the other houses in the neighborhood. They don't need to come to me anymore. They can go on any of the platforms on the internet. There's several of them, popular ones like Zillow, and they can see all the red dots and all the sold prices and what's under contract and what's available. This is the data we used to give out, from our paper years ago. But now it's very transparent. Everything's on there. So they don't need to come to me to make that decision anymore. They've already done the homework before they show up at your house. So pricing is critical because, again, the buyers have all the information they need. Everything's online. So before they decide to step out of their front door and step into yours, they're going to look at the price and decide, is your house priced like what the other homes sold for in the marketplace in the last 6 months to a year? That's number one. Number two is condition. The condition of a home and what that means, just as a layperson, it's not to pick on your home. It's just really simply, we need to show space. Buyers are looking at space. They're hopefully trying to place their furniture in your home while they're in there looking at your home. That's what we need to happen. So maybe it's as simple as moving some furniture around or making a grouping in your living room so that the buyers can see the space because they are looking around. Oftentimes they'll come and they'll start measuring things. That's a really good sign. So occasionally we could stage. That could be as little as putting some pillows and pops of color in, or we can, go all out and maybe talk about painting. And that is something that is probably a good, return on investment. I have found that to be the most important, one of the most important things. Light and bright, neutral. Grays are out. So for you people who love gray, forget that. That's gone. Now it's kind of like off-white, just neutral. And why I talk about staging, well, it's part of my marketing plan. So how I usually get into that is when we talk about what am I going to do to market your home, the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to talk about the right price, and I'm going to go through the data, and we're going to talk about why it's so important. The second thing on my marketing plan says complimentary staging consultation, and people often say to me, "What does that mean?" That's how I talk about staging. I usually take out my brochures. A picture is worth 1,000 words. So I'll say, you see these houses here? What do they all have in common? And often my clients will say to me, well, they look beautiful. Yes, they look spacious. There's not a lot of furniture. There's not a lot of clutter. There's not a lot on the countertops in the kitchen. We want to make it look like sort of like a showroom, right? And this is going to be temporary. It's going to be for, who knows, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, whatever it takes, that you're going to have to live a little different than you live every day. So it's a big ask. I understand that. But the people who get on board and look at the pictures, they realize themselves that, oh, my house doesn't look like that. And then we talk about how can we make it look like this, right? So I told you, paint is one of the simplest things, usually the least inexpensive, of course, depending upon the square footage of your house, not always, but I have always found that paint, simple as paint, is the biggest return on investment, and depending upon price range, it could be $50,000, it could be $200,000. It depends. It depends if you're in the luxury market or you're in the, primary market. Maybe a $750,000 house in Northport will go maybe in the 900s. It depends. But the nicer you set the stage, the easier it is for the buyers to be attracted to it. And the better you price it, the more people come. And the more people who come, the more offers we get. The more offers we get, the more money you get. Welcome back to Home Ground. I'm Catherine Lindstadt, broker associate with Douglas Elliman Real Estate out of Northport, Long Island. This is a show where we talk about real estate without the fluff, just your basic principles. Whether you're thinking about selling soon already on the market or just what's happening in the market, today's episode is for you. We're talking about pricing and condition, the two decisions that sit entirely in your hands as a seller. And I'm going to give you my honest, unfiltered take on how to get both of them right. Instead of bringing a guest in for this episode, I thought I'd give you some of the tips that I've learned along the way and put them into context. Here we go. So I'm going to give you a little take on the Northport Pulse, like a little real estate taste of what's going on in the market right now. So we have homes that are on the market and they're flying. There are multiple offers and they're going way over asking price. And then we have some homes that are sitting and I don't really know what's going on with all of them behind the scenes. However, they have many days on market right now, 30, 60. Then we have our homes that are in great condition and they look beautiful. And again, they seem to be, some of them are sitting. So you would ask me, what's the problem? So the problem likely is that the houses that are not priced well or are not in good condition, the buyers have already made that decision themselves. They're not coming because they don't feel the house is priced properly or looks like something they feel they would spend that kind of money on. So they're not coming. So those will sit in any market, whether it's a buyer's or a seller's market. The nicest, well-priced, most beautiful homes always sell. And they sell, if they're priced well, they almost will always sell for list price or more. In Northport, it's definitely a seller's market. There's very little inventory. Inventory is very tight, and there's high demand as far as buyers right now. Huge demand. I mean, there are, I was just out with some buyers. There was 7 offers on the property. After speaking with the listing agent, I told my buyers, okay, you're going to have to pay more. And here's what we're going to have to pay. And this is why, right? Shortage of inventory makes it a seller's market. Most sellers think their house is worth more than it is. Let's talk about why that happens. Again, there is a formula and a strategy behind pricing. It's definitely, I would say, the most important part of real estate is the price. And we have to sort of be objective together as partners, right? I'm going to give you the information about the homes that have sold over the last 6 months, year, and try to get as much data for you that I can so I can explain to you and show you what these homes look like and what they sold for and how many days on the market it took. Because pricing, if you don't get the price right, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to sit longer, and I know it's the hardest thing a seller has to deal with because this is your home. It's a place where you raised your family. And I understand that, it's emotional for you. So I like to just try and go over why and show you photos and give you the same data. I'm going to be really transparent and tell you, these are things that we have to say, let's take ourselves out of the equation. Let's think like a buyer thinks. Let me tell you how the buyers think. And then try to get you to understand from my point of view, how I come to that determination. And it's not hard, but it is emotional because everybody loves their home. Everybody loves their home. And believe me, I love your home too when I come in, but I'm not the one buying it. So my job is to be as objective as possible and as transparent as possible in getting you to understand the numbers. The numbers. The numbers are critical. So what actually happens when a home is overpriced? Well, here's what happens. It could be beautiful, it can be painted, it can be, the shiny penny. But when the price is too high, what happens is you'll see a disconnect, right? So the buyers, they may go on their favorite platform. Let's just call it Zillow for now. And what you'll see is you'll have, 60 saves, 70 saves, and there'll be 2,000 views or 1,500 views. And when you're not getting showings, there's a disconnect. That's where the disconnect is. The disconnect is those people that have viewed your home have already decided, I'll wait. I'm going to sit on the sidelines. I'm going to see. I don't think you're serious about selling, and nobody wants to come if you're not serious. Nobody wants to come and get involved with a seller that doesn't really want to sell their home because that's what the buyers think. The more days that you spend on market, buyers start asking questions like, what's wrong with this house or what's up with that house, right? These are the questions I get asked all the time from the buyers. What about that house? Why is it still sitting there? Right? They start to wonder, is there something wrong with the house? Because they just, that's naturally what happens. If something's sitting there a while and it doesn't, there's nobody coming and there's no showings and no action, everyone's thinking, And then you have your other group of buyers that are savvy and have done their research and homework, and they're saying, nah, I'm not coming, until I think the price is right. So it's called the price is right, right? If the price is not right, it's not right. Nobody's coming. You can have all the showings on Zillow and Realtor.com and all the platforms, and we all have reciprocity as brokerages here. So you're all over the internet. Believe me, that's where your audience is. And they know. And when your house is overpriced, the disconnect is you won't get showings. You'll stay on the market. You'll wonder, you'll start asking me, what's the problem? What's going on? And then we have to go back to remember our initial conversation when we talked about how important price was? I told you we probably need to be here, right? And you said, no, I think my house is worth a little more. And I said, okay, we'll try it your way. That often doesn't work out well. So Zillow's estimates work great if you live in a tract home community like Arizona. There's 300 homes and they're all 2,800 square feet and they're all, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage. Zillow works great. Its estimate's fine for there. But in Long Island, we have very eclectic real estate, especially like in Northport Village. You could drive down a street and there'll be 3 1,800 square foot homes, and then you could drive 2 more feet and there'll be a 4,500 square foot home. So it doesn't work well in areas like Northport or on Long Island in general because you have these eclectic hamlets. So, right, it's an algorithm. It's like an Excel spreadsheet, right? So if you had all the same square footage and, all the same size properties, that would work. We don't have that here. So how we price properties, well, if I had a street, like let's use Northport Village, for instance, and I had a house that was, let's say, 4,000 square feet, and I'm trying to price that out, I have to go look inside the village within a mile radius, as close as I can get for the same house as yours, which I'm never going to find exactly. However, we adjust. There's pluses, there's minuses. Sometimes it's for square footage. Often it's for property. Inside the village, if I wanted to find something on a half acre, if you had a half acre, and you had a house that was 4,000, 3,000 square feet, I'm going to look for as close as I can get to that. I'm not going to pull something that's on, point 0.07 and tell you it has the same value. It's not. It's not going to. But the village has intrinsic value just being inside the village itself. So then there's that factor. So factoring all those things in, square footage, property size, condition, things like have you updated your home? Have you done any updates? Kitchens, bathrooms, flooring, roofing, central air, heating, cooling? Do we have a garage? How many bays do we have in the garage? Do you have a patio? Do you have a pool? What else have you done to the home in the last, let's say, 5 years? Updates are very important because that's where we plus and minus in price. That's how we compare to other properties. All right, so somebody said to me that they just installed all these crystal, doorknobs in their home, and it's sort of like a contemporary home. That's not going to work. We're not going to add value for that because it doesn't fit. It doesn't blend well. So often, some of the things that you guys do, like you say, "Oh, I love this cranberry bedding." No, it's just not going to add any value. So before I go in and when I sit down with my sellers, the first questions I ask them are, what are you looking for in the agent you hire? And then I ask them, what do you think your home is worth? Right? Everybody or most people have an idea. They haven't just called me out of the cold and decided. They've done a little research. So I'm going to ask you. Sometimes I hear, I don't know, that's what you're here for. Other times I hear, well, I think my house is worth X, right? And then I kind of know where I have to go with the conversation based upon what you're thinking or how to get you to where I need you to be or where I think you should be priced. So oftentimes, I will present all the data and we'll go through the photos and we'll talk about days on market. And then, some of my clients will say to me, but I really think my home was worth X. And I understand. It's emotional. That's a tug at their heartstrings. They're feeling the emotion now, and that's part of it. So if I've suggested, let's just call it 800,000 and they think their house is worth 850, I'll say, okay, let's try it your way, but let's put a deadline on that. Let's give it 2 weeks. Let's see what happens. Okay. I'm willing to partner up with you and let's see what happens. I'm going to do the marketing. I'm going to do my job. But if we don't get the amount of showings or we don't get the interest or we don't get any offers, we're going to come back to this conversation and we're going to talk again. And by that time, usually after 2 or 3 weeks, they are asking me, what's wrong? How come we don't have any offers? And then they're feeling it and they're saying, oh, okay, because they're asking me for feedback, right? And I'm always giving them feedback. Hey, we had a great open house today. We had, 10 people. We had 2 brokers, no complaints about the house. Nobody, only thing they said was maybe upstairs was a little tired. That's the feedback I heard. So that's what I'm going to give to you. And after you hear that for 2 or 3 weeks, you're going to say, well, what do I need to do? That's when we're going to talk about the price again. So when I walk into a seller's house for the first time, the mental checklist that I'm going through is I'm often I'm looking at everything. I notice every little detail, things that stand out to me. I will I will jot down on a notepad as we're walking through the house. First, we're gonna sit down and we're gonna have a little conversation when I come, right? And then we're gonna walk through the house, and you're gonna point out things that you think are important to me, and I'm gonna take notes. And I'm also observing what I think is important, what I might feel we could improve as I go along, suggestions for you. And then we're gonna sit down and we're gonna talk about those things. Could be as little as there's too much furniture in this bedroom. Are you okay with removing an end table, or can we add some pillows to your bed? Can we change the comforters? Can we brighten it up? Oftentimes, it's mostly things on counters, removing. In the bathrooms, we don't want your toothbrushes on the countertops. You can brush your teeth, but you got to put them away when we're showing because we need the buyers to really see space. They can't see space if they're focused on looking at your things. So we're going to take down personal pictures, family photos. I never want family photos in a home. There's two reasons for that. One, I don't want your family on the internet. And number two, because when buyers come, we don't need them to be nice. We need them to bring their pocketbooks, right? They don't need to know you. And number two, it's distracting. It's distracting. For people that are trying to visualize their family living in your house, they don't want to see your family photos. Sometimes they feel that, maybe you don't want to leave if they're there. We have to make it as neutral as possible. So, paint, probably my single favorite thing to recommend is painting. So, if you've lived in your home for 20 years and we've all had these colors, right? And I'm guilty of it myself. Cranberry walls, I've had brown walls, dark brown, a movie room. I think those are the times when we need to lighten up the house, when we need to make it feel lighter and brighter. That's my favorite thing because it's amazing how it changes the aesthetic of the house. And oftentimes you'll say to me after you're done, wow, I should have done this. I would buy my house back now. I would buy my house back. It's my single favorite item also because it's the biggest return on investment. And depending upon price point, I can't give you exact numbers, but let's say painting a 2,000 square foot house, let's say painting the whole, let's call it a ranch for now. Let's say it's 2,000 square feet. It's probably going to cost you $3,600, give or take, this is based on my painter anyway. Um, $3,600, if your house is worth, let's call it 779. Well, that $3,600 could obtain you 50,000 in resale because now you've just made the house look fresh and clean. Buyers love fresh and clean. They work. They don't have time to be handy. So, other than painting, my recommendations would be try to look at your house as a buyer, as an outsider. So that means in the kitchen, if you have cabinets that are packed with things, right? People are going to open up your cabinetry. They're going to look at space. Thinning out your kitchen, your pantry, opening up closets and bedrooms. Let's make them functional. Let's pretend that we're in a show house, a model house. If you could look at your home through that eye, thin closets out, again, declutter, take things off countertops. Um, don't leave the toilet bowl cover open. Don't do that. That's what I would say are my other favorite suggestions. Just think pare down in your mind, pare down, right? Less is more. Less is more. My other favorite things are sometimes just changing cabinet hardware. Like it could be a kitchen that's maybe a little darker, older style. Sometimes just changing the hardware to something more modern can give it a refresh. It can just update it that little bit that buyers come in and say, "Oh, I could live with this. I could, now it feels more modern." Little things like that. Of course, we always want your house to smell great, so we will have to get rid of kitty litter boxes and put those things aside. A garage is maybe a good place for that if we could avoid keeping it in the house. So we are going to have to live a little different and without our furry friends being right in our bedrooms or kitchens. That's definitely a good suggestion. So oftentimes when I'm hosting open houses and the buyers are first coming to the house, um, you know, it's interesting in Long Island, they're very polite. They knock, which is funny to me because we have signs that say open house, but they knock, they come in, and we'll be standing in the entry foyer. I'll greet them at the door. And maybe we have to take our shoes off, which is my favorite thing because that means the house is really clean. And they'll start asking me questions like, so is this the first open house or where are your people going? Where are you people going? They often are questioning motivation when they come in. And then I'll try to take them into the kitchen. And of course, we have our disclosures that have to be signed. But I think they're looking around at space when they first walk in. Especially if you have a house that has a two-story entry foyer. They're kind of looking up and down and assessing space. And they're saying, is this big enough for my family? And that's probably one of the first things they do when they walk in the door, assess the space. So they say your first impression is a lasting impression, right? So remember, when somebody opens the front door and it's light and airy and bright, and they can see from the foyer your formal living room and your fireplace and your dining room, that's going to draw them in. Price it right and get it in great condition. Cannot be home when I show your house. You must go out. Bedding, white bedding. Buyers cannot see past clutter and they cannot imagine it empty. They have no vision. Population is 80% visual. No doubt about it. The laundry room. You want to overprice your house by 25 grand. You're going to cut down the amount of showings you get, which is going to cut down the offers you get. So, not recommended. Everything I just walked you through applies everywhere, but let me tell you what it looks like specifically here in Northport and on the North Shore. Our buyers are sophisticated, they're savvy. Many of them come from New York City. They've seen a lot of properties. They know what things cost. And they're not going to they're not going to pay North Shore prices for a home that feels like it's been unloved. But they absolutely will go and pay top dollar for a home that's priced correctly and shows beautifully. I see it every season. The listings I'm most proud of aren't necessarily the fanciest homes I've sold. They're the ones where we did the work up front and priced it right, got it ready, shot it beautifully, and then watched the market respond exactly the way we told the seller it would. So if today's episode was helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. It genuinely helps more people find home ground. If you're thinking about selling in the Northport area or want an honest conversation about pricing and getting your home ready, reach out. I'm at Catherine Lindstadt on Instagram, or you can find me on Facebook, same. So visit my website for more information, and I'll see you next week.